Dustin's just getting over the Omicron.
Yeah, dude, me too.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, I didn't get tested, but I just figured it because my wife had it first, and then she got tested. So, like, what's the point of getting tested, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's COVID like there where you are? You're in Central Standard. So where are you at?
I'm in Texas, so it's like,
Oh, okay.
there is no
Okay.
restrictions here.
I know. I just came from
That's-
Texas. I love it.
Yeah.
So great. It's America.
People just go about their own business. I mean, there's cases high in Texas like there is everywhere else. I know we're not the worst. I mean, we're not the least, but it's just business as usual. It's been like that the whole entire year. You know,
How long have you been in Texas?
I moved here in August.
Where are you at?
Fort Worth, DFW area.
Hell yeah. Okay. What gym do you train at then?
Fox Fitness.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. What is that one like?
It's really nice. It has an outdoor setting, a pavilion, the outdoor squat rack, hammer strength machines, turf, tires, sled pole. And then inside you have all your, squat racks and dumbbells up to 150s, machines, a lot of arsenal equipment.
Oh, wow.
It's perfect. And it's 17 minutes to my house, so it's perfect.
I say that sounds like is that bigger than Destination?
Well, didn't Destination change locations?
I was just there 3 months ago, so if it changed since then, I'm unaware.
Yeah, I went to Destination back in 2015, and I do believe they either expanded or went to a different location. So
Okay.
I'm comparing it to the old location. It's similar. It's similar.
Okay.
It's for sure similar. No question.
Okay. So just want to jump into this X's and O's, and I got to tell you, the first time I ever really saw you speak at length was on It's Just Bodybuilding with Ron and Dustin. And everything you said to me made perfect sense. And I was at Fort Knox at the time working with soldiers, and Dustin was at JVLM, and we started talking about you, and he's like, oh yeah, dude, Chris knows his shit pretty good. And so I started implementing it, and it made a lot of sense. So what we'd like to dig into today is your differences, the way you think compared from endurance athletes to strength athletes to physique athletes. How do you transition, and what are the biggest mistakes they make? So, I mean, I guess the easiest way to start was just, what's your philosophy in dealing with a bodybuilder, a physique? Like we talk about nutrition.
Well, okay. So think about a core bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of balanced nutrition.
Okay.
And then in that bubble, you have side bubbles that kind of cross over into the main bubble, right?
Okay.
So no matter where you are in regards to endurance athletes or bodybuilding or strength, there's a lot of crossover, no matter which individual endeavor somebody partakes in. The biggest mistake people make is they think that this endurance athlete diet versus the strongman diet versus gymnastics diet or marathon runner's diet somehow it has to be drastically different with no carryover. The number one, I know it sounds so silly, but the number one issue with diet is the inability for somebody to follow it for extended period of time. It doesn't matter if that diet is ideal or optimal. If that diet is geared towards whatever endeavor they're doing and they can't follow it, it's not a good diet. So the most important aspect I focus on with no matter anybody doing anything is sustainability of that nutrition plan. From there, then you start to change the macronutrients slightly based on what energy systems they're using, of course, right? It's like obviously marathon running, boxing, they're going to be expending a lot more carbohydrates, right? And then the third component, which is, I wouldn't say these are in any specific order of importance, but digestion. Mm-hmm. If obviously digestion's out the window, you're losing the first two really quickly, right? So digestion, sustainability of the diet, and then of course, individuality of that person's endeavor, whether it's a little more carbohydrates or a little less carbohydrates, a little more fats or a little less fats. But at the end of the day, man, people hate to hear this, but it just ends up being very individual. I mean, I was prepping a MMA guy. I think he's 4-0 right now, and his diet is pretty low in carbohydrate, and it's fairly high in fats. People are like, well, he's doing like 3 hours of exercise a day. How's that possible? His digestion's great. His energy's great. He's losing body fat. He has to make 185 by his show date, a day before weigh-in. And the trajectory is working perfectly. Looking on paper, if you show that to somebody who just came out of nutrition school and they're using the formulas of carbohydrate requirements for an athlete of that nature, they'd be like, whoa, his carbs are too low. Well, that's where individuality comes in, you know? And I think that's where people start to put nutrition concepts in boxes. Or you ever hear people say, oh, bodybuilders can't eat fruit. You can't eat fruit on a contest prep diet. Oh, you can't? Well, but you can eat gobs of white rice. Like, but you can eat muffins and you can eat gummy bears and like Sour Patch Kid. That's okay though.
Right.
So people put things in boxes and it ends up closing off their mind to the whole array of tools you have in your nutrition box that can be implemented with a variety of athletes in different scenarios. But I would say that the vast majority of, okay. So if you're going to talk about individuality of certain strength sports, people tend to eat more protein. Do they really need more protein? In my opinion, no, they don't. But I always give it to them because it's psychological, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then obviously your your athletes have to eat a large quantity of food to fuel endurance, ultra marathons. Obviously, protein will be a little bit lower, so they can eat as many carbohydrates as they need. You know, it ends up being a you're trading one for the other. Like, how is somebody who's a 150-pound endurance athlete going to eat 250 grams of protein and still eat 600 grams of carbs a day and not feel distended and bloated if they're running, 10 miles a day? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of individuality. And like, I know I'm scattered with this, but like, there's so much to talk about in regards to this. But people keep putting things in boxes, and that's the biggest mistake. That's their limiting factor to being able to help a large array of people. Sometimes things don't make sense, but they work. And that's where people kind of run into trouble.
Okay. That core base that you speak of, like what are your percentages of your macros that you start with? Then you branch off individually. Do you have like set, like, we're going to start with this for this week and we'll adjust it from there?
Okay. Well, the first thing I do is I usually do a 72-hour recall. What are they eating now? Right.
Okay. Because
think about it. If you need somebody to eat 60% carbohydrates, right? And then they're going to eat 20% protein and then 20% fat. And like, that's what generally this individual people do who are doing these endurance sports. And you get their diet and their diet's only 40% carbs. Are you really going to jump right to 60? No. Right.
Yeah.
So in the individual who's doing that, I'll end up slowly lowering either their fat or their protein if it's too much, and then add a little more carbohydrates to like 50%, and then see how they perform, because they're coming to me because they have an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the issue? I got low energy. I bonk out. Okay, let's figure out why. And then you look at their diet, you figure out the nutrition deficit, and then you start tailoring it. People don't do well when you take their diet and you dump it upside down, right? So if it's the complete opposite of what they're doing or too extreme, they don't adopt well to that. If you make small changes, you wait a month, make a few more small changes, wait a month, then it's like they can kind of ease into it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like taking a bodybuilder who's used to eating 400 grams of protein and they're light heavyweight, and you're like, dude, you need to only eat 250. They're like, I'm going to find another coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They demonize things like that. They were like, oh, this guy's a quack.
Yeah. But if you said, hey man, you're at 400 grams of protein, I think it's a little much. I think you might benefit from a little more dietary fat. We're just going to bring down your protein just a little bit and bring your fats up. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm okay with that. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, they're like, Chris, my digestion is much better. I feel better. I feel more energized. My hunger's improving. You're like, great, let's drop another 20 grams of protein and add a little more something else, to get them kind of to where they're at that sweet spot. It's funny, going through nutrition school, they have all these like parameters of like strength athletes and all these different, from going from Olympic lifting to weightlifting to bodybuilding to your runner to your ultra marathon runner. And like, here you see all these percents and these graphs of energy used. And yeah, it's all helpful knowledge to know, but it really doesn't honestly apply in real life. It just doesn't, because everybody starts at some starting point, and then you usually just have to work from what they're doing and get them to where they are. And at the end, if they're performing well and they're getting results, who gives a shit what the macros are at that point? It's working, and you know what? That brings another point, is that's one of the most frustrating parts about Instagram and too much information on the internet, is you'll get somebody who sabotages themselves, even though the results are mint. And they'll be like, you know, Chris, what do you think about this? And then you look back at the results and you're like, listen, your mile times have decreased, your digestion's improved, your body composition's improved. And here we are 3 months into it, and you want to change it. Now tell me why you want to change it again. Well, I don't know. I wasn't sure if there's something better. Dude, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's where people become their own enemy, man. You know, like, and that's the toughest part. I'm sure you guys get the same thing where your clients will send you articles about, what do you think of this? I'm like, listen, man, I'll be straight with you. Like, I don't have time to read through 300 pages, or like crazy number of pages, and give you my input. All I can tell you is what we're doing is working, and that's it. And that's what you need to work on, and focus on the progression of where you came from the last 7 days, 3 days, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. That's all the information you need to know, you know?
Well, and there's value in just trusting the process too, because if you're living in this state of questioning things, I don't care what you say, you're more stressed than you should be. You're not going to be as diligent because you don't believe in what's really transpiring here. And you're slowly just being your worst enemy as a client to a coach. If you're living in this constant state of just relinquishing your thoughts and just following stuff, because you're going to learn more in that process too if you just relinquish control, why people fight that in the first place when they're paying someone to do it for them. But it happens. Unbelievably, it happens.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, and people listening, you can't say that enough. Stop overthinking and trusting the process. It's because people spend too much energy worrying about not just the wrong thing, but worrying and bringing themselves in the direction of failure. And that is I luckily, knock on wood, genetically, I've never been one to do that. I hired a coach. I listened to that coach, and I don't care what everybody else is doing. I'm just going to worry about me and what my coach tells me to do. I've been like that since I was 10 years old. The coaches I had motocross. That's what he asked me to do. That's what I'm doing. Yep. Why are you doing that? Honestly, and I was like, I don't know. I'm learning these drills until I'm good at it. And that's what I focus on. One of my good friends and one of my clients, he turned pro in classic. He went to go train with Dorian Yates one time, right? And he was asking him all these questions. And Dorian Yates goes, man, shut up, man. Just lift the weight. Like just lift the weight. Like, you know what I mean? Like, stop overthinking all these. Like, do I pull here? I pull like this? Dude, just lift it up. Like, let's go. You know?
There's a lot in that simple situation that is important though, because I think a lot of people, the person you were kind of outlining that's questioning things or looking at other stuff on social media and letting all these other influences come in and kind of detract from what they're trying to do. You kind of have to be diligent enough with something long enough, and whether it's super productive or not, you have to gather all those skills that go with being disciplined and acquiring that knowledge for what's working for your body. And if you are inconsistent with it, you never really get to the depth of what you're going to get out of something. And I know that's a big thing that I see with people is they never stuck with anything long enough to get to the good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And you'd never earn the ability to ask those questions because you're just not there yet. I mean, most people might answer in the beginning if they want to do something, is like, do it for 10 years by yourself and keep good track of things and see how much you learn on your own. If you can do that, and then come to the table and pursue people that are going to answer your questions after that. And you'll be in a much, much better place, and you'll have ownership over that knowledge too. I mean, that's not necessarily applicable for everyone, but if everyone did do that, I think they'd solve a lot of their own problems.
Think about this simple concept, right? Think about the first time you did deadlift, and then the first time somebody taught you good technique, and then fast forward all the way till now. It's when you look at the movement in a video, very similar, but boy, does it feel differently, and boy, is your execution completely different. Why? Training years, experience, learning the movement, what it feels like, how to brace yourself, how to contract your lats. These are the missing points that I think people forget when they go, oh, I'm doing dumbbell presses. I'm doing them. Yeah, you are. But Jay Cutler's doing them too, and he's using the same weight as you are, and his chest is legitimately 13 size bigger than yours.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? Like people, they don't get that. Like, I don't know, maybe I should do extra chest exercises. No, pal.
Yeah.
You're gonna start worrying about the execution of how you're doing something. Don't just look at it, mimic it, and think that's all there is to learn from it. One thing that I never understood, and forgive those who are listening who this happens to, but I still can't grasp this when someone says, my training's boring. And I usually respond with, if your training's boring, that means you failed to learn anything new, right? I've been doing, like when I was bodybuilding, I was doing the same group of 20 exercises for almost 15 years. It's the same things every week, but I'm still learning, still challenging. When people say after 3 weeks, they're like, I'm getting bored of my training program, I'm going to change it up. There's something off there, you know, like
I would agree.
You have to ask yourself, why are you getting bored of something so quickly? Either you really don't like doing this, or you're really not applying yourself, or you're not learning. Learning is addicting because learning comes improving, right? And that becomes why we do what we do.
That's it.
You know, it's funny. I mean, to play off what you just said, in our industry, strength and conditioning, I've always told everyone that if you look back at the previous season, say like football season, and it's February, March, you look back at the previous and think to yourself, okay, I would have done everything the exact same. Everything the exact same, training those guys, weight room, conditioning field. If you do that, you haven't learned anything. Like you have to constantly be thinking like, okay, well, I did A, B, and C, but if I did X, Y, and Z, I would get much better results and actually revamp it the entire time. We have the same system. We have a philosophy that we employ. Like you have a nutrition philosophy you employ, but if you look back, for instance, I'm sure if you look back a year at what you're having clients doing, you'd probably think to yourself, if I could do X, Y, and Z a little bit different, it would have been better because you've learned since then. You know, oh yeah,
100%.
see what I'm saying? It's almost embarrassing
100%.
to yourself. You don't want to admit it, but it's like, yeah.
You know, this past year, dieting people for shows was my best year as far as percent of client wins, overalls, and such.
Yeah.
And despite having those wins and doing this for now almost 10 years of prepping people, it still feels like I don't know enough.
Yeah.
And there's 3 people that I couldn't get to nail to their mark. And it still feels like the same as it was the previous year. And looking back at it, I'm like, man, I know not to do that, not to do this, not to do this. It's still a learning process and it's ever evolving. And that's what keeps you driven, you know? But one thing I want to add to that in regards to training program, nutrition, progressing, I think one thing that people, which is, I feel like is very fatiguing for most, especially as you get an adult because family, kids, wife, job responsibilities, is, are you really in it in here? Or are you not? For example, this is the easiest example I can make. I'm doing boxing now. I'm done bodybuilding. So I've been boxing now and getting into it. And it's been a difficult road going from that heavy anti-athletic to trying to be more athletic and moving. Is I know in weeks I progress really quickly because I'm legitimately in it. I might be showing up to boxing 3 times a week. I might be giving it full effort physically, but am I really there here mentally trying to push myself and focus? Because the days you're really focused is the days you progress, learn, move faster, more fluid. Days where you're just showing up, still putting in the work. There was a couple of weeks where like I didn't make any ground at all. I was showing up, I was training hard, but I wasn't getting better. And then all of a sudden my coach last week was like, he goes, I don't know what happened in the last 3 weeks, but he goes, you just got leagues better all of a sudden. It's like I just started to regain my focus to improve. And that's where a lot of people don't understand. You can get the nutrition plan, you get the training program, you can get the coach, and you could go through everything they're saying to do. And there's going to be situations where you're not maximizing the most of it because you're really not giving it your all in here. That makes a big difference. It really does. Yeah. It's like, has anybody ever broken a record physically in anything when they're like, I just showed up to me, I really wasn't really in it, and I just benched that weight, or I just ran that 100 yards, or I just broke that mile record. I just wish I wasn't in it that day, but I beat it. Nobody ever. You know what I mean? Nobody.
Do you find that internal drive with the people you've worked with, is there a common theme that all of a sudden they click and they start getting it? Is there one-ish type of thing that you can nail down, like, oh, they saw themselves in a mirror, or they stepped on a scale, or anything like that?
I know this, and this is not always in the spot. When I talk to somebody, I usually know 80% of the time if they're going to be successful based on what they say and how their mentality is. Out of all my clients this past year, the ones that progressed, you could say with ease, with less alterations on my part, are the ones I know that are in it here all of the time. And it shows in their physique, because sometimes with physiques, you're like, what is going on here? And you're like going back through your records, looking through like, what is the problem? What is happening? You're like, everything looks right. All the boxes are checked. I don't understand what's happening. And then like a month later, they're like, dude, I'm just not in it. Like, you almost know, I already know the clients every year, which ones are going to progress like this and which ones aren't most of the time. Sometimes I get surprised. Yeah. But like when people click, they click. And the clients I've had for years, like 5-6 years, I know when they're in or when they're out. You prep them like 3 times and they're just like on the money, get peeled. And then all of a sudden some prep goes like, dude, I've made like 5 changes, dude. And like, you've made like very minimal ground. What's going on? Well, and then you start prying a little bit and they have all this other shit going on,
That's it. No, you nailed it on the head. That's usually what happens. I found myself when I start having to play detective and think like, what am I doing? Or what did I do? That's usually my first cue. Well, now early in the beginning, I was like, I'm sifting through like playing detective. And now I'm like, what the hell happened at home? Like, what's going on with your relationship? What's going on in the gym? Like, what did you get sick? I mean, I'm tracking some other things too, but it's so funny. Like everything you've said so far, it's so funny. There's a level, and there's a question in here too for you. You can tell you're speaking from experience and ownership over this knowledge and working with people, as opposed to the person you were laying out, which is, I just graduated from school and I'm reading out of the textbook and I'm following the rules I'm supposed to be following. It's incredibly evident that you're answering saying all this stuff from this point of, I've been there, I've seen it, and you've touched on a lot of little things like that, but that's one of those big ones. Is it's the psychology part of what you do. That's going on there. Like, there's so much there that you're not learning that part in school, and I think that's the difference between success and not.
Yeah, and like the psychology of a champion, right? It's like there's not a lot of emphasis into people like that, and this is where what's funny is like when I the first person who had a very influence on me mentally was Evan Centopani, right? Yeah. So like I met Evan years and years ago, and he's like, dude, let's fucking train. It's because I was going to school down in New Haven, and I started training, and like obviously his physique's crazy. He's way further along than me. I'm like, dude, I'm just happy to train with this guy and learn. And I just kind of like studied his mentality, right? And what I could say about Evan at the time was thick-skinned. He didn't get rattled easy. He was never influenced by anybody. Evan had an idea of how he was going to do something, and that's how he was going to do something. He might listen to advice, take it in, take it or leave it, but he was never steered in the wrong direction. And I'm like, man, that mentality, that utter focus without letting things bother him, let things get under his skin, and still be able to execute no matter what kind of stress is going on in his environment. I was like, man, I gotta be like that. Which makes me also saddened to see so many people will see champions in any sport, and the first thing they say is, I gotta get that guy's training plan. I gotta get that guy's nutrition plan. Maybe the first thing you gotta do is focus on his champion mentality. That mentality where you can get up every day, do what you need to do, even if you don't feel like it. Everything in your life is not going well, but you're still able to focus and train and perform. Being able to train, perform under pressure, you should be worrying about that. Those are all things that people miss and they don't emphasize enough of. It's like, what about that guy who's still able to perform and does what he does? Screw his training program, pal. His training program ain't going to help you. Learning more of his mentality is probably going to help you go further than just his training plan. I remember watching was it Venus Williams and some tennis match years ago, and it was something like 1 point difference. The clock was ticking. You got half the crowd hates her, the other crowd loves her, and it was all down to like the last two, whatever they're called, and I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, how much pressure is on this athlete to perform? This isn't get on stage flex. This isn't get on stage and lift weight. This is performing against an adversary for millions of dollars, for a championship, and you have fans hate you and fans that love you, and you still performed and you killed it. Like, how many people can't handle that type of pressure? There's people who can't even handle pressure going to work every day,
Yeah, I think
that stuff I admire.
Right. Like, well, you brought up Evan, and I'm glad you did, because he was the first bodybuilder I remember watching that I started emulating in terms of the way he was like eating. I'm wondering, was that something that you picked up on as well? Like, he would always eat out of glass. He'd eat the whole apple. Or are these all just like fairy tales that I've watched?
No, Evan does a bunch of stuff that normal people don't do, like makes liver burgers and all this stuff. Like, I wasn't really into that, but like, it just, what I guess sometimes you start to look in people what you don't have yourself, right? And like, man, like I used to get easily rattled or bothered by what people say, or my environment's going bad, so therefore I had a bad training session. I'm like, man, this dude shows up every day and he's just like on the ball. And then I just like remember being like, I gotta be like that. I gotta stop worrying about, like, whatever happens, it's not physically harming me, so why am I letting it bother me? Just keep rolling.
Right.
And then it's how I learned how to kind of be, because in bodybuilding, in any sports, any competitive level, you have to learn to be thick-skinned. You have to be, unless you have some crazy level of skill that just makes up for a lack of performance. But that's not most people. And that's what kind of inspired me about him as an individual back then, is just his ability to stay on point all the time,
Yeah, that's super good. I mean, I used to refer this to players. Like, you can tell if someone has, a mind that's a steel trap. Like, it doesn't let anything else in. And that's kind of how I always referred to it. And it, pretty quickly if someone is that way. And I don't know if that is all just who someone is, because I think people can find their way into that. And I also think that when you do anything at a high level, like Evan's at, and you stay at a high level for a long time, there's a lot. I mean, there's a level of meditation going on when you're training and you're that focused and you have to do it every day, and you find a way to do it at that like you're saying, that high level consistency every day. There's a tremendous amount going on that kind of reframes and rewires things, and not only makes you thick skin, but it just, man, it does something to you to where it's hard for other influences to come in. It's hard to get rattled. It's more than just not letting influence. And I think a lot of that comes with being that focused and training that hard. And there's other things going on that bodybuilding field that I found for myself too, that it's like, I didn't anticipate getting any of this extra stuff from just being consistent with training for so long and constantly making progress and all those kind of things. It changes it rewires you, I think, too, on some level.
That argument people make, like, oh, some people are born that way, some people aren't. And this is where I disagree with that. I think it all comes down to the belief and the desire to change or improve. I mean, going way back to when I was a kid, and this is how I make an example to people who say, oh, that's just the way I am, which I think is the biggest cop out bullshit I've ever heard. Yeah. That just means you're going to fail forever. You're never going to be who you could be because of that. Think about when you're young, right? And say it's like your first championship game or your first wrestling match, you're nervous, right? But you do that for a while, that nervousness eventually goes away. Do you become not afraid? No, you become more brave, right? So obviously that's conditioning your brain to respond a different way. So that's already happening. So that means that's possible. So that means if you have an anxiety of speaking in front of people, which I used to have, eventually you can beat that if you really want to and you believe you can. I used to throw up. I remember, dude, in 8th grade or 6th grade, I stood up in front of class one time. I got called out randomly to read my paper. I threw up and I passed out.
Oh, wow.
And from 6th grade all the way to high school, I took zeros in public class in front of the class because I wouldn't do it. I was trying to be playing badass. I'm like, nah, dude, I'm not doing it. And just be like the bad kid in class. But really, I was afraid. And then in college, I took public speaking, advanced public speaking, et cetera, to eventually in my internship, speaking in front of a bunch of breastfeeding women regarding breastfeeding. It's like, I learned to beat it. Now I can do it. Now it doesn't bother me. Why? Because I wanted to change. I could believe I could. So when people always tell me, oh, it's just too much pressure, it's too much pressure, I'm like, no, 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 no. It is pressure, but it's how you're perceiving pressure. You can eventually learn how to beat that. Everybody can improve that. And I think more people need to not only, which goes back to overthinking, right?
Yeah.
Overthinking can be something that you can change. It's something that your brain wants to pathway because probably your parents overthought and that's how you picked it up. But you can eventually break that thought process if you really want to and you believe you can. But I think everybody can become more conditioned in that if they want to. I'm a firm believer in that, man. It's like we on earth, outside of being, you know, what we do in our sports or whatever, we want to be physically better and better. I do think as we get older, we should also become a better, well-rounded person in ourselves and not become that weird, eccentric wacko who lives down the street and you're, you know, down the street who just like, remember the people in high school? Remember the people in high school? You're like, and you meet him like 10 years later, you're like, yo, that dude got weird. You're like,
Yeah.
what happened to that guy?
He was so cool.
Yeah. What happened?
Oh.
It's like where down the line in life where like you have some anxiety when you're a senior in high school, and all of a sudden 10 years later, you're so anxiety stricken, you can't even leave the house. It's like, what direction and path in life did you go there? It should have been the other way around, you know?
Right. How many of these like counseling sessions have you had with someone 6 weeks before a show and they're in deep, but they haven't quite started to really lean out, so they're not quite positive, they're flat, and like how many times have you had to talk someone off a ledge?
Dude, do you know how many times people say to me, hey Chris, I'm really sorry, I know you're kind of playing more the psychologist right now, and I'm like, I don't think I get this all the time with all my clients, all of them.
Yeah,
weight loss, bodybuilding, whatever. And I go, listen, you don't understand how important the psychological aspect of this is, because if your mind is not in a good place, your body's just simply not going to follow. It's as simple as that, dude. It's as simple as that. But I do that constantly. Some people I do, but you know what's funny? The people that don't say anything are usually struggling. They're just struggling to themselves, right? So I kind of sometimes check in like, hey man, I'm just checking in how your head's at. Oh, my head's fine. I'm like, you sure it's fine? Well, I've been thinking about something. And then they come out, you know what I mean? Like, dude, it's important that you tell me what's going on. You can't let something manifest. I can talk to you about it. I can explain it. And then tell you straight on what's going to be like, you know? But I think that's one failure thing that a lot of coaches don't do is they don't check in on the mental aspect, because as men, we try not to talk about our emotions. We try to toughen things out and figure it out on our own. But sometimes man to man, being able to be like, hey, bro, I'm fucking struggling here. You know, like, you got any advice for me on this? Because this is taking me down. And there's nothing pussy about that. It's just, you got to be able to admit that and to be able to get the insight you need to be able to carry on further, you know? But that's something that I emphasize a lot. And I have a lot of feedback from people saying that I've done that more so than a lot of coaches they worked with in the past.
Okay. So just you're involved a little more in your clients, like, I won't say personal life, but life.
Sometimes, dude.
Sometimes it's personal.
Yeah, let me tell you, especially with women. Women.
Yeah.
You know, like guys like, oh, dude, I don't want to have sex all the time. These are dieting, they're prep. And then they're like, my wife thinks I'm interested in other chicks. I'm like, dude, just have her reach out to my wife. And my wife will explain, or dude, just explain to her. It's like, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, pal. You're like, you don't have food, you're stunk, you're hungry, you're not thinking about reproduction. You know, you're just not. Or when people are constantly fighting, I'm like, dude, listen, I don't care about what you guys are fighting about, but you really need to be non-reactive in the next 5 weeks. She comes at you yelling, you just keep your voice calm, just listen and just try to diffuse it. You just got to get over these 5 weeks. If she comes at you with guns blazing, don't come out with a bazooka. Then she's going to come at you with a tank, and then it's going to be a fight, and you're going to be awake all night, and it's going to be a disaster. You know,
right?
I do a lot of that.
Oh yeah, dude. I remember watching actually you mentioned him already, but a Dorian Yates interview, and the guy asking him, like, you know, I think it was the London Real guy who since turned to a loon, but he asked him like, well, like, you weren't interested in sex at all? He's like, no, my body was just trying to survive. Like, I was 270 pounds shredded. I hurt to walk. Procreation is not on my mind. And that's
Record, Charles Paul warned that guy that if he went vegan, that would happen.
The way I explain it to people is I've had to talk to my clients' wives. I'm like, listen, when you're sick, you have the flu. Are you thinking about sex when you have the flu? They're like, oh God, no. I'm like, that's exactly where his mind's at.
Yeah.
He might look at you and be like, man, those are nice boobs. That's a nice butt. But they just don't want to do anything with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's all
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah. They can understand it's cool and they like to look at it, but they don't want to do anything with it. The time will pass and they'll be back,
Yeah.
Right. Have you ever had any experience with anyone who comes to you for nutrition advice, nutrition work, and their libido is in the crapper? And then you get their nutrition fixed and it comes back?
Yes and no. It goes both ways.
Okay.
So obviously, when you're in a caloric deficit for a period of time, sometimes your sex drive can dip, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're getting lower body fat. I mean, personally, me, anytime I'm in lower calories, my interest in sex decreases within a week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It just doesn't come across my mind. Maybe it's because my mind is focused on a goal. That could be it. But I had that happen before with general population a lot.
Okay.
Because their disordered eating comes with messed up sleep, lack of coping skills. They can't manage stress as well, and they start eating better. Then they have more energy. Then they move more. Then they sleep better. And then their coping mechanisms gets better because their sleep improves. Then they want to have sex more, and then it just
Okay, it's like 5 stages down the rung from nutrition. It like dominoes into it. Possibly.
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
Oh, rock on. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever see anyone with your right nutrition plan for or working with? Do you work with anyone with just training, or is it just strictly nutrition?
I'm mainly nutrition. I give people training programs, like a guideline to follow if they need one, or I might look at what they're doing to make sure it's not an absurd amount of volume above and beyond. Like I've had people do 8 exercises per body part and 5 sets per exercise. It's just
delicious.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
yeah.
Jay Cutler. Oh yeah. I mean,
take 30 years to get to that volume, right?
Yeah, right. Oh yeah.
But I usually will look at it. But one thing I pay attention to most with training is execution of movements.
Okay.
You get a lot of people who are like, oh man, I'm doing these presses, but I can't seem to grow my upper chest. I'm like, oh, okay. You look at their structure, they got some protracted shoulders. You can see their pec minors tight. They got some probably dysfunctional movement in the shoulder, or lack of proper length tension in the chest. And I look at their movements and I'm like, I can see some things we could change here, and then try to drive them off that weight focus pressing movements, change how they're doing it a little bit, and then focus more on the upper chest, especially with lat development. So many people lat pull downs, they're leaning their body back and then pulling back, they're not coming straight down, they're arching their back, not keeping your rib cage tight. So I try to do correction and execution of movements versus something like you guys would do or John Jewett would do, where they're it's constant, micro cycles and then mesocycles and doing their training. I don't do that.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do give direction and recovery. They're like, dude, this is my 3rd workout in a row. I'm really beat. I'm like, oh, why? What are you doing? Oh, I'm deadlifting, squatting, and barbell rowing all in the same week. I'm like, well, we might want to change a little bit of what we're doing here. You can't deadlift on Monday, squat heavy on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever? I remember hearing a Chris Aceto interview, and he said that if I see people visually where they look run down, I tell them to train like a California bro and take an extra day off. You know what I'm saying? His big thing is hit yellow machines and just kind of stand around, talk to chicks, have some more muffins.
Dude, I love Aceto.
Dude, he's great. He's so great.
I worked with Aceto for New York Pro.
Oh, what was that like?
Pro.
Tell us a story.
Dude, it was the greatest. I had my favorite person to work with was Andrew Vu.
Is that where that muffin comment came from?
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but that was the
Oh, I got tons of good stories. So Andrew Vu and I, we saw eye to eye, and he was really on the ball. He's my favorite to prep with, but Aceto was for sure my favorite in the regards of just feeling so relaxed. Okay, so here's some funny Aceto-isms. We always call them.
There you go.
So one of the funniest things so I'm like, hey man, I know he doesn't work with anybody, but I knew Jose Raymond really well, and I know Evan. So I'm like, can you guys put in a good word for me? Tell him I'll listen to him and follow him. So they put in a good word. They're like, oh yeah, he says email him. So I email him, I send him the money. And then he goes, all right, Chris, send me your pictures, your diet, your gear, your supplements. I'm like, I sent it to him, and he sends it right back exactly the same. And he goes, all right, check it on Friday. So I'm like, oh, okay. I check it on Friday. And then he's like, okay. And he makes a few changes. And then, all right, check it on Tuesday. And then just there's so many funny things along the way that he did that just didn't make sense. So one of the things that stood out, we're like 6 weeks out from New York Pro. And he calls me out of the blue. Chris, like, yeah, man, let me tell you, I have no idea what I'm doing with you. He goes, no, really. He goes, I know what I'm doing till Tuesday, but after that, I got no idea what we're doing. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, all right, have a good night.
Just to mind fuck you.
I know what he means.
Yeah,
he's
right.
Like, we have a plan till Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah.
We make a
We gotta
change.
make adjustments. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one time I was on the way to the gym and I sent him pictures and he's like, and he calls me. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm on the way to the gym. He goes, turn around. I'm like, what do you mean turn around? What are you training today? I was like, chest. He goes, you're going to train chest tomorrow. You're going to go home and you're just going to relax. He's like, actually, you know what? Go walk around the mall. Just take a leisure walk around the mall. And I'm like, okay, really? No training? He's like, just turn around. Trust me. So I turn around, rest. I just walked around my neighborhood, send him pictures. 2 days later, he's like, I dropped like 1.5 pounds. He's like, perfect. You're harder. You're leaner. Leave it at that. But there's so many funny stories like that along the way. And for New York Pro, he comes in my room. He's wearing like a Metallica shirt, like sweatpants. He just like
disheveled
like
hair.
Got up.
Like
Yeah. He comes in, lies in my bed, lying there. He's like, all right, let's see what we got. A few poses. Then he's like, all right, what carbs do you have? I'm like, I got everything. Me. I was like, I got fucking everything. He's like,
right.
Any of that will work. Just 45 carbs worth of this, that, and do this and do this. And I'll be back in 2 hours. And it comes back in 2 hours. I'm like drier and harder. He's like, perfect. Do that again. And I'll be back in 2 more hours. And then, so it comes to the end of the meal of the night. And he saw me like 2 hours prior to that. And he's like, dude, you're spot on. And I'm like, what am I doing for my last meal? He's like, well, what do you normally do for your last meal? And I go, well, usually steak and a salad. He goes, it looks like you're eating steak and a salad. Like, I'm eating a steak and a salad before the night before a show. Yeah. But it was great, man. He was very relaxing to work with. He was funny. And then, the diuretics. This is really funny.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
So he's like, all right, what do you have on hand? I'm like, well, I have aldactone and I have hydrochlorothiazide. He's like, okay, write this down. I'm like, okay. Take 6.25 of hydrochlorothiazide and 12.5 of an aldactone. And I go, Chris, they're 25 milligram tablets. And then my aldactone's 50 milligrams. He's like, yeah, just break it apart into crumbles. And then just eyeball a tiny crumble. And he goes and put it in a cup and drink it. I'm like, okay. So dude, I do it. And the next day I was down like 3 pounds. This is the day before New York Pro now. Dry as fuck. And he goes, see that? See? He goes, we did 12.5, we did 25, would have been too much. It would have been too much.
Oh my gosh, it's funny.
And then I remember one time Jose was telling me, he came to his room, I think it was Olympia. And Chris came in there and he's like, all right, you look pretty dry. I think we might need to be a little drier. Where are your diuretics? And he goes, right here. And he goes, this is all of them? And Jose goes, yeah. And then he takes them in his hand and he goes, over a cup. And then he puts the diuretics in his pocket and he goes, all right, here, drink this. And it's empty. And Jose's like, it's empty. He's like, yeah, just drink it. And he drinks it the next day, meaning Chris didn't want him to fuck it up and take diuretics.
Right. So he took them away from him. Like yeah.
Oh man. His personality, I have to say, when he's like no longer in the picture in bodybuilding, I'll be bummed.
That's gonna be a sad day.
Yeah.
That's gonna be sad.
I love listening to him and he's just funny. Remember, do you guys see him RX Muscle when they had like that guru challenges and they're going down the list of everybody's secret? And then Aceto goes,
yep.
Wait, hold on. Let me write this down. So you start Tren at 5 weeks out.
Let me go. I need all these secrets. Yeah.
Jokes. Oh man. Or that guy who was like, hey, Chris is like, dude, I gave this guy his plan and he wrote it back. He goes, this isn't scientific. And Aceto's like, yeah, it's not scientific. Yeah. He's like, I don't want this. And Dave's like, what'd you do? He's like, I just gave my money back. Gave him his money back.
Yeah.
It's not scientific.
It's like, yeah. No, did he ever send you? Because there was a pro, Seth Shaw, who lives out in Vegas now. He used to train like Westside Barbell like once a week. He came by and he worked with Chris, and he said he would get emails from Chris, and it was just like 2 or 3 words, and then just like a handful of emojis, and they're computer emojis. So there's garbage looking emojis. They're not even nonsensical. Did you get those?
Yeah.
As well?
So it was like hieroglyphics. So when he would text me, it would be like MF for muffin, PR for pre, W workout, SL for Slin, 2, and it would be like, I look at it and read it like 3 times. I'm like, muffin pre-workout with Slin. Okay. And then you judge it that way. But I had a great time working with him. It was nice at the time because I believe he was still working with Evan at that time, and he was working with Jose. So it was nice to talk to them about, like, you know, the different things he says. And I remember having to check with Jose. I'm like, dude, is he for real? Like, is he messing with me?
Yeah.
Or is he for real? He's like, no, just it might sound off the ball, but he just has an eye for things. Just let it be. Just let it be.
Right.
You know?
If you're crumbling up diuretics, you have an eye for things. It makes me wonder now. It's like, is he telling Jose in the other room, like, oh no, you need 11.2 and 0.4? Like, that's just, that's almost comical. But at the same time, it's like, well, he knows what he's doing.
But he keeps you really relaxed. Like, he had these rules he sent me when he sent the email back initially, and it says, rule number 1, trust the process, listen to Chris Aceto, right? And the next one was like, train hard, stay focused. The next one was like, follow the nutrition plan. And the last one goes, if you have trouble, see rule number 1.
Yeah. Well,
there's a lot of experience in those rules, and you would know that too. That's not even funny, in my opinion. Like, that's the honest truth. That's the honest truth.
And that's where people get difficult, because people associate complicated and elaborate with effectiveness.
Yes.
Because something is complicated and it looks very sciencey doesn't make it a superior program.
Yes.
Doesn't.
Actually,
so do
that's
you have
something.
the mentality with your clients to educate them over the time period then when you're working with them? Do you want to see people get more educated as they work with you?
Yeah, I tell them to ask me questions. Like, I do. I'll be like, listen, I want you, if you have questions, like, I feel free. I'm not going to get irritated. I'm not going to be like, shut up and just follow it. You know, like, that's not me. So I'll explain to them all the changes we're making, you know, I will do that. But I don't have them resource any resources in regards to nutrition. I do tell them, though, to watch certain individuals. I'll be like, hey man, like, if you're really looking to get a better understanding of training and execution, like, follow John Jewett stuff. Like, because sometimes people don't listen to people that aren't at a high level. So John Jewett's at a high level, has overcome a lot of genetic deficiencies in his physique compared to other 212s, and still done really well. And his training is not this crazy swinging, slowing, throwing weight around in different directions. It's very thought out, very methodical, very precise. And when people see that, they're like, oh yeah, maybe I do need to take the foot off the pedal and focus a little more on that, you know? And so I have people follow him in regards, and it's been beneficial.
Yeah, but do you find that that whole issue you're talking about working with Chris, where it keeps you really relaxed, and obviously the cortisol isn't shooting up, you're not naturally holding water, so that way when you do break up a 50 milligram diazide, you know, it does work on you. You know, like, what's like, are you taking an aspect of that? Is that why maybe, like, you think subconsciously you're involved with people and you're very calming, because you know that just to keep everything just moving, you have to have that mentality, especially leading into like the final weeks of a show or competition?
Well, you know, there's a few different types of coaches in the industry. I call them chem coaches, the one that just do drugs. And they just push as much drugs as possible, low calories, high diet, and just see what sticks to the wall, right? And then you have people that are just dictators. Follow this, shut up, follow this. And then you have coaches that, if you were going to think of a coach in high school, like a real solid coach that you read about, those coaches are invested in those players, right? They're invested. They're not just dictating. I feel more on the level of that, where, like, I'm invested in that client. I need that client to communicate. I need them to be calm. I need them to be confident in my ability. I need them to be okay with what we're doing. Because I tell them this too. I go, listen, along the way, if I ever recommend anything or I change anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, we're not doing it. Even if it's the right thing to do. If it's the right thing to do and you feel uncomfortable, it's not going to have the positive effect that I would hope it to have. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So then people always come to me, they're like, Chris, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Is this possible? I'm like, oh, I could work with that. And just know that it might, we'll add a couple more weeks extra just to make sure we have that in our back pocket. But I like to work with, I like helping people, man.
Yeah.
And I like helping people just be a better individual, better athlete, all around. I don't just like focusing just on nutrition training. I like to focus on all aspects, and a lot of my clients say the same thing. They're like, Chris, you help me in real life too. My relationship's better with competing, because ultimately, like, as you guys know, being an individual sport fanatic, no matter what that might be, can easily destroy relationships, right? Because you're so driven into one thing, you start to prioritize that over everything else, over family, and that total lack of balance is just not there. And so try to ground people, understanding that you can still make ground and be really good and put a lot of effort into something without completely shutting out everybody in your life,
Yeah. Have you ever, because you brought up another interesting point when you discuss if it's not like sciencey, and I call it like the new sexy, any type of program, whether it's nutrition or training. Have you ever lost anybody because you're working with them like, this is just too basic, and they just like leave you?
Never.
Okay.
But I have lost people because I'm too healthy.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Gotta push the envelope.
This is really mild for me. I had one guy one time, he came to me with high blood pressure. He hasn't had lab work in 2 years. And I'm like, listen, man, like, you've been on this amount of crap for this long? Yeah. And you haven't got lab work? I'm going to need you to get lab work before we really get started. And he's like, oh, okay. And then like a week later, he's like, hey, man, like, no disrespect, but like, I don't think we're going to work out. Like, it's kind of a pain in the ass for mine to get lab work. In my head, I'm like, this dude's got 2 kids. It's like, you're 35 years old. What are you going to do? Just kill yourself? Do you have life insurance? Probably not.
Right.
And that's where all the bodies are dropping, because people are just neglecting their health. But I've had a lot of people don't come to me for that reason. And I have a lot of people who come to me because I'm more on the health side of things. And that's the first thing I say. Chris, I approached you because, one, you're a registered dietitian, and I like how you approach people and you talk to people. But most importantly, I know you're on the healthier side of things in the sport that's kind of just all about destroying yourself. And they like that, and I like that, because I don't want to work with people who are just like, when are we going to add more? When are we going to do this? Like, dude.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Yeah, they're trying to push the agenda for you on their end.
Yeah, this is like, I tell them right off the bat, but listen, I'm a very conservative guy when it comes to things in bodybuilding. I go, that going in, I'm not going to be pushing these things that some of these other coaches are doing. I'm just not going to do it. You can go work with somebody else. I don't care.
Yeah. You have to stay true to your style, I think.
Yeah. And it's just like, if anybody ever got hurt doing something I recommended, what?
Right.
No, dude.
Yeah, that haunts you.
I think that's
haunts
why,
you for life.
Yeah, because I mean, like, just like you laid out, you're investing in your clients, and when you actually take that mentality to it, it matters. Like that, like all this stuff matters. And if I'm taking ownership over these people's lives, it matters, and you put a great deal of care into that. And yeah, you're gonna do what feels right in your heart.
And you know what it is, as a coach, sometimes your clients, believe it or not, which shouldn't always be the case, sometimes they trust us more than their doctor. So like, I've had situations where a client comes to me and he's like, hey man, my doctor's telling me this and this. I don't know if I should believe him or not. And I'm like, dude, let me see your labs. And I'm like, dude, listen to me. You need to go follow his advice. You need to go to the specialist and get this ruled out now. He's like, wait, really? I'm like, yes, you really do. He was wanting me to say, nah, dude, you're fine.
Yeah.
Just keep going, stay in prep. No, Kimosabe. Luckily, everything's always worked out, but like, you don't want to leave that to chance, You just don't. I had one client once, right, for this. He's all of a sudden stopped progressing. His body looked very filmy, very watery. Like, guy, you've been checking your blood pressure, right? Yeah, everything's fine. All right, okay. So I make a few changes. I made some real drastic changes, real drastic. He's going to respond now. Goes up more weight. I'm like, guy, you have swollen ankles? He's like, yeah, I've been getting a little more edema. I'm like, send me a picture of your ankles. His ankle's pretty swollen. Have you really been checking your blood pressure? Yeah, I've been checking, but it's been high. My God, you've been telling me it's not high. How long has it been high? Pretty much this whole prep. How high has it been? And he tells me, and I'm like, listen, dude, you need to get lab work right now. Go get lab work. Dude, his creatinine was through the roof. BUN's through the roof. EGFR's down. Go, dude, you're done. You're done.
Shut down.
You gotta figure out what's going on and do this. Long story short, pulled out. You know, he wasn't acute renal failure by any means, but he was in trouble if he continued that trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Started on lisinopril, dropped some body weight, got normalized, stopped training so hard, brought his protein down. We get everything back to normal, and then his body started to respond again. But like, that's where people are like just pushing the envelope, ignoring things. Oh, it's just 2 more months. It's just 2 more months. I can make it. Man,
It's a long time though. 2 months.
it's not worth it, dude.
No.
It's not worth it.
It's not. Nope. That's
Scary.
Way. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
I get how that happens though. I get how,
Yeah.
you know, especially if you're dealing with someone who's, you know, relatively healthy or healthy in general, doesn't see the doctor a lot, or the doctor hasn't done much for them other than give them a physical over their life, but you've made them transform their body and they've really seen that. There's this huge level of trust in these walls and stuff that are broken down when you're working with a coach that, I guess I didn't realize how quickly you can get into someone's head and have them feel comfortable after a little bit of work with someone. But I get how that happens, how someone trusts you that much to where they're questioning their doctor and needs you to confirm that what their doctor's telling them is appropriate. I'll be honest, that stuff kind of stresses me out when people ask me those questions, to be like, how did I get myself in this position again?
I know. It's like, we're both not doctors. It's not like we can give them advice besides, listen, if you really don't like what your doctor's saying, then get a second opinion. But
Right.
I'm not the second opinion.
Right.
Yeah. You know?
Right.
And then the other thing is like the doctor's aspect. And my father's a physician, and I'm very fortunate because my dad's one of those physicians where, hey, Dad, is this bad for me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I honestly don't know. Like he can make the assumption, like, oh, you're going to do that, you're going to die. Because doctors do say that.
Yep.
But he's like, I don't know. It probably can't be good, but I can't tell you if it's going to be detrimental to your life or not.
Right.
I would probably do more research before I can comment on that. He's one of those people that I have to look back and research it before I can comment. He's one of those doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a lot of doctors that come to you, oh, you're taking protein powder? It's going to rot out your kidneys. It's like, okay, this conversation's over.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
As soon as that doctor goes that direction, that's when turn off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No, exactly.
And that's where a lot of like distrust comes from, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you ever work with anyone who, this is a deep rabbit hole, but maybe it's not, that, are you familiar with that original, like the Mike Benzer type philosophy of training where like, you train?
Yep.
Okay. So that minimum 3 days rest between workouts, what's a diet for someone like that look like versus a diet? And this is a far left to the far right, like that 8 exercises, 5 by 20 for each one, that incredible Jay Cutler type, like Clydesdale volume. Like what's the primary difference between those two?
Well, it's just going to be total calorie expenditure is going to be way different, right? Because obviously if you're doing more exercise, you're going to need more carbohydrates and calories overall to sustain that volume, not to mention being a surplus of. But this is the downfall of too much volume, too much intensity, is you're overstimulating your sympathetic nervous system, right?
Yeah.
You guys are familiar with taxing your CNS, but in the susceptible individuals that could potentially end up developing IBD or IBS, the reason so many bodybuilders have digestive issues is for that main reason. They're training too hard, not getting enough recovery, not having a diet that is a large enough variety to feed that gut microflora in their intestinal tract to keep their gut healthy. So they're just eating white rice, chicken, and hot sauce,
Yeah.
and then training super hard, taking androgens. It's just their digestion just falls apart. So when people have to train with that large volume, that intensity, and they have to eat an absurd amount of calories, it usually doesn't always end up working out great if they're in their 30s, right? Because as you get older, digestion is not the same.
Yeah.
Right.
When you're younger, you can get away with higher volume once and higher intensity because you're younger, you can heal quicker, but also your digestion gives you a little more of like bulletproof. You get older, you train 4 days in a row, super hard high volume, and you're eating tons of food, your digestion goes to crap,
Right.
you know? So it's usually in the situation, it's more complicated to work with somebody who's used to doing high volume and all that intensity. And because they have to eat a large quantity of food on top of a compromised digestive tract because of that type of training, versus the people who are like, oh, I train 4 days a week, really, really hard, really intense, and get out. I don't have any problems with overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system in those people. I just don't. They just end up eating less food because they don't
Okay.
need as much. But it's also, in some sense, sometimes beneficial because they are getting more rest. They're not taxing their digestive system, so they never even have digestive issues to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
See, the people who do a lot of volume too and train like 5-6 days a week, usually are also the ones that are very reliant on pre-workouts and stimulants.
Yeah.
Because they're like, dude, I'm feeling tired today. I got to jack up with more stimulant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that cycle, digestion,
Yeah.
tired, stimulant, digestion. And then it's just digging yourself some hole,
Mm-hmm.
When you're dealing with someone that's on the more advanced end of the scale, or even yourself, I guess put yourself in bodybuilding mind as opposed to boxing mind, how much do you think that nutrient timing or doing those kind of what I kind of reserve for like advanced techniques in nutrition, nutrient timing, what I'm doing like pre and post workout? I guess my question for you would be taking a good high quality physique and making it better only from the diet standpoint, not from the drug standpoint. What do you think are the factors that you start to manipulate that you found to be most beneficial as far as fine tuning a diet, even whether they're on a bulk or on a deficit? What have you found in your experience? It's like, this is actually beneficial.
Is this individual have no problems with digestion?
Yeah. No problems with digestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll first ask questions, right? That's like, how was your training? Are you getting good pumps? Do you feel strong, or is it workouts hit or miss? Workouts are hit or miss. Okay. Do you train the same time every day? Train the same time every day. Okay, we roll that out. Train the same every day. Do you feel that training is dipping midweek, beginning of the week, or is it random? And they say it's at random. Okay, so that rules out it being an issue like after leg day or after back day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll start looking closer. Okay, how long do you wait to eat from your pre-workout meal till you train? Oh, I wait 45 minutes. Okay, 45 minutes might be a little too little. What are you eating? Oh, I usually just eat rice, broccoli, olive oil, and chicken. Okay. Do you get hungry? I get a little bit hungry during the training. Do you feel low blood sugar at all? No, never. So like, these are the questions I start to ask to narrow down where there's a problem. It's like, I've had people say, I go hypo during the workout. Okay, we need to increase your fat intake prior to that pre-workout meal. Yeah. Or people say, dude, I'm burping up food, but I'm still eating 90 minutes before I train. Okay, let's reduce the fat intake in that pre-workout meal. I'm losing my pump. Are you salting your food at all? Not really. Okay, let's start adding a little bit of salt in the first 2 meals, extra salt in the meal, 2 meals prior. And make sure you have a liter of water within the 45 minutes of training and see what happens there. The other issues I do deal with type of nutrient timing is when people have a post-workout meal that's too large.
Okay.
And then an hour after, they're like, dude, I'm so tired. I'm like, fall asleep. And then their appetite is shot for the meal after that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so what are you eating post-workout? Well, I do whey protein and I do like 200 grams of carbs and cream of rice. Okay, maybe we'll pull some of that cream of rice out and then bring in some oats, and you do a mix of cream of rice and oats. And maybe we'll add just maybe 5 grams of fat from peanut butter, and then see if that makes a difference. And then that way to even out that rise and crash.
Yeah.
Oh, my appetite's still too bad. Okay, well, then we're going to lower the volume of that meal completely, That way they're not,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's generally what I try to address. That tends to be the issue is, losing pumps during training, burping up food while they're training, getting hungry while they're training. And then after the workout, they eat, they crash really hard, or they're burping, or they lose their appetite later. And try to do that, because people tend to get too extreme, right? They're like, it's all about pre-workout and post-workout, and intra-workout. And like, you get like 50% of their carb intake in the off season just around those 3 meals. I'm like, you're not going to feel great if 50% of your your 300 carbohydrates is being consumed in between those timelines.
Right.
So let's make adjustments. One thing I never found beneficial is people doing an absurd amount of intra-workout carbohydrates. You see, like I'm sure you guys are familiar with like the studies done with Olympic cyclists and how much glucose your body can uptake in 60 minutes, or glucose plus fructose, how much it can uptake in 30 minutes. Let's be honest. Bodybuilders are not spending the calories that an Olympic cyclist is burning in 60 minutes, right? Let's be honest.
No.
Right.
So you don't need 150 grams of carbohydrates in your intra-workout, You're going to be doing more, worrying about digestion and blood sugar than you are about training. So intra-workouts, it's a hit or miss in regards to if the person's been doing it and they like it and they don't have any issues, I let them do it. But rarely, if somebody's not doing it at all and they feel great, do I add it in. I will add it in if it's remedying a problem, right? And it's also another way to add more calories in. If you're like at the brink where you're like, where do I even add from this guy? This guy's eating 420 grams of rice per meal. It's like, you know what? Let's add 30 grams of carbs in intra. It's more calories,
Yeah. Are you a big fan of like having like a post-workout like carb drink just to replenish that glycogen, or is it like just get some like amino acids or protein and then have your meal?
I'm so biased because I don't know if I'm biased, but I'm biased to the research. So like when you look at the research of glycogen resynthesis, when you're only training once per day, your post-workout meal becomes less important because it's 24 hours between training sessions, right? So when I looked at all this glycogen scales of the athletes with no post-workout meal, training once a day, twice a day, and seeing that there's no difference if you're training once a day and there's multiple carb meals following, then it didn't make a difference. Then I usually just end up being like, do you have a good appetite post-workout? Yes. Then we're going to make sure your carbs are a little higher in that meal and fats are a little bit lower so you can digest them, stimulate the protein, the carbs, and then you can get back to your normal eating pattern. Because I honestly never want to bring somebody, I don't believe in large boluses of food. I just don't. I used to, when people are like, oh yeah, post-workout, 300 grams of carbs and your other meals are like 50 carbs. It just throws your body all over the place. And like, there's no way they're storing all that. They're going to be storing some of that as fat, but carb drinks ends up being that per individual's preference. I have some people like, dude, I just don't want to eat anything. Then I'm like, okay, then we'll just do like a whey isolate and a carb drink. Or if they're like, dude, I love food, then I'll just do whey shake and like make like a cream of wheat or cream of rice or grits and fruit and like a touch of fat to add to it, whether it's like coconut oil, 5 grams of fat coconut oil or nut butter. Then they enjoy it, add a little salt in there, and they drink it and they eat that right down. But I rather it be in regards to that. But some of these carb drinks, man, I don't know. I've been there during that phase. Remember the phase of waxy maize? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I had those big blank bags of that crap.
Just cocaine in the bag. I
don't even know if there's a label. I think they probably call that a white label supplement, basically just buying that crap in bulk.
And looking back at, I know like you can't always use anecdotal, and that's one thing. Like one thing people ask me, hey, what is your education taught you? I'm like, it's taught me not to use anecdotal evidence to provide information to people, right? So like me personally and with clients, I just noticed that it wasn't really a superior practice. When I reached my biggest and I felt the best and my best digestion, I was eating just boatloads of rice and grinds after my workout, and whey protein. I was doing what I could eat to get down. And I noticed my clients too. Sometimes those carb drinks kind of make you feel, you're drinking 75 grams of lightning digestive carbohydrates. Like, are you really going to want to eat a bunch of rice and chicken like 2 hours after? Probably not,
Right.
Yeah. I found those to be tools that you can, that tool works very well at a certain point in time. But you don't use that tool all the time. I don't think I did see some serious benefits. Yeah. I saw some serious, especially like low when I'm starting to approach that. I don't know my body fat, pre-contest or anything, but when I'm approaching that sub 6% and maybe the only carbs I'm getting in the day, or like that maybe pre-workout or intra-workout, just to not feel like dog shit when I'm training and actually get a pump and something like that, then I found, oh man, this is actually a really useful tool. But I'm not going to see the benefit and the cost ratio to use those things all the other time. That's also a huge factor for people. But I'm also glad I picked that rice and grinds thing up from you, because I couldn't find cream of rice. It didn't exist in the town that I lived in. I'm like, this is insane. And if I got one thing for you that I appreciate, is I was like, oh, there is another thing out there, and they got flavors. So it is wonderful.
Something you said is very interesting when you said the cost, and that's where, back to our first question, was some of the mistakes people make is people are spending too much money on supplements and not enough money when you look at their food. And then you're like, oh, you bought $280 of supplements. What are you buying for chicken? Oh, $1 a 10-pound chicken. Oh, what are you buying for beef? Just regular store-bought beef, frozen vegetables, and you're just like, dude, if you're going to invest more money, like, buy better cuts of meat, buy Bell and Evans, buy air chilled chicken. It's going to digest better. You're going to feel better. I know there's not much nutritional difference between grass-fed beef and not, but I've noticed a lot of people digest grass-fed and bison and game meats better than your standard conventional beef. So it's like, buy money and spend your money in pasture-raised eggs, not your conventional eggs. Spend the money on that. Spend the money in making sure your food tastes good and you like it, not just throwing together boiled, oven baked. Oh my God, one of my clients the other day, he's doing great, man. He's done weight loss. And he's like, bro, I was like, getting sick of this food, man. You got any ideas? Like, I review his plan. I'm like, man, you got a lot of options on here. How you cooking it? Well, I'm doing this and that. I'm like, send me a picture of it. And they sent me a picture of it, and I sent an emoji back going, bleh. I'm like, bro, what is that? And he's like, well, I just baked chicken breast without using a thermometer, plain, white rice, plain, and broccoli. And he puts
raw
a little
chicken's
mustard
prettier
on.
than that.
Oh, I go, bro, no wonder. I would make it a week. That's what I used to do back in the day. You know?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's one of those tricks, or one of the carryovers that I didn't realize was going to transpire from bodybuilding, was if you wanted to stick with it long term, like, you got to learn to cook good. I mean, but period. I think you got to learn to cook good. Otherwise, it's not happening for any extended duration of time. Maybe for a prep, and then you're like, that's not for me. It's like, no, if you're doing it for 10 years plus, you're gonna like, every bodybuilder I know that's been doing it for a long time, like, they can cook something good if they want to cook something good for the most part.
Oh, baked chicken. That's tough.
Now, would you rather have baked or boiled chicken, Chris?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say baked.
Tastiest thing.
I'm gonna say baked, but I need a thermometer to make sure it's cooked right to 165.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because big chicken, you get a big breast, you don't cut it right.
Yeah.
That big side's gonna be 165. That side's gonna be 185.
Yeah. One side looks like my grandma's arm, and the other side's like, I'm gonna cut it open to check, and then you're screwed at that point. But
you know, it's one thing, since I've been in Texas now, like, I'm obviously in Texas, I got to act like a Texan. I bought a nice smoker, right?
Of course.
And one of my other friends I made friends with here, he's got a smoker. And I'm like, bro, he's got bodybuilding. I'm like, you smoke chicken on that? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how do you do that? So I just put plain chicken breasts in there, put it to 400 degrees, cooked it for 35 minutes. And that has a probe. You can put it in there and look at your phone, and you can see what the temperature. Yep, Traeger.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I come out, it looks like it's dry as hell. And then I cut into it, and I'm like, this is delicious. And it's plain. Yeah. And I'm like, I wish I had this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's one of those game changers, I feel like. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
No, I have a lifter who has a Traeger as well. He says the same thing. It's like that's the most incredible machine. I was like, I would have spent this money when I was broke on it.
Yeah. It's a game changer, because you're going to make real basic cheap meat taste much better. You're not going to have as much room for error if you overcook it. It's still going to taste decent. And it's really not time consuming, considering the fact that, like, I can walk away, and then I can set the thermometer to beep and alarm me when it's ready, and I can go out and get it, and then it'll be done. Right. It's a no brainer. I mean, I got my wife to eat chicken breast again. It was that tells you something.
That's how many chicken breasts have gone through that household in your relationship.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, chicken again. I'm like, yeah, chicken again. She's like, wait, how'd you cook it? I'm like, I smoked it. She's like, I'll have some, you know?
Yeah. All lessons I wish I learned, or probably we learned before I gave GNC $15,000 between the age of 14 and 20.
How old are you? How old are you?
33.
Yeah, 30, 38. So
yeah, 32.
So similar era. Like back in the day, like, dude, I didn't have social media when I started. It was just the local guy at the gym. Hey, how do you cook your chicken breast? Just put them in the oven. Or I eat a whole rotisserie chicken. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
Yep.
You know, like, and then you just follow what the gym guy says. There was no referencing the internet, you know?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. You can get away with that, but yeah, you also make a lot of mistakes, and you also get caught up in these rat traps of blowing. I mean, legitimately, it actually makes me a little sick to think about the money I spent on stuff that I, one, know to be complete bogus now, and two, just stuff that like I didn't need. It would have been better spent on higher quality food.
Yeah.
Dude, I remember I first discovered a rice cooker. I was mind blown.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah. I was in college when I first found a rice cooker. I think I was in college, and you're not supposed to cook in your dorm room, but it's like, because I had guys that were like, I don't even know. I think they might have been cooking drugs in their room because they had all kinds of weird smells coming through the outlets in the walls. But a rice cooker is a very discreet implement. Oh, yeah, my other buddy too. He had like a full griddle, like didn't use his desk for work. He had a flat top griddle on his desk and would just be frying up pancakes and bacon and eggs in his room, and like you could smell it through the whole hallway. And like it's a huge no-no to have a huge grill in your room, but
yeah, I remember that. I had a little George Foreman.
Yeah.
All the little secretive things.
Rice cooker is like, yeah, I have some clients now that don't have them. Like, dude, go get a rice cooker. Trust me.
Yeah.
Especially if you have trouble eating rice, you know?
Yeah.
It makes it, it's huge because especially if you're eating a lot of rice, you can make rice taste. But I mean, it's like a smoker for chicken as it is to cooking. Like, because people eat 1 minute rice. I'm like there's a big difference between real rice. Major difference.
And it comes out the same every single time.
Yeah.
That's it. And you cook rice daily, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think you brought that up. The few of those are good points. I think you brought up one that I haven't heard very many people talk about too, is which you could probably go on a good rant. I don't know how many documentaries you watch as far as the nutrition stuff, because I feel like also in our generation there's been a lot of look into nutrition and the food industry and all that kind of stuff that's come to the forefront that didn't even exist when I first started bodybuilding. But the carcinogen effect of like meat when you're cooking it, if you're not blackening it, that is a hugely removed concept from a lot of documentaries and things that people talk about, and they abuse facts that are just completely inappropriate. But yeah, if you're not burning your meat, you're not getting that same thing in there. I know you've mentioned that before on things, but I think that's critical points.
You mean in regards to demonizing red meat intake?
Yes, exactly. But there's a lot of that stuff. I'd be interested on what you've seen and what you think, because there's so much of that going on where I'm like, people get into it and I start saying stuff and I'm like, I don't know if I have the energy to actually tell you how you're being lied to right now, or do I want to waste my energy on it? But like, there's some really manipulative things going on.
I really honestly think, I wish, and I actually, you can't, because it's, we live in freedom of speech world and people can say whatever they want. So it kind of falls into that. But
well, you're in Texas, so that's still
I do. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. That's right.
I'm in Washington. It's different.
I do feel if people are health professional or a degree, that we're supposed to, by the code of ethics, to remove bias from the information you're stating, right? So these individuals who condone a particular way of eating based on cherry picking research and information and then presenting it to the public in a biased way should be illegal.
Should.
If this was random person saying whatever they want to, that's fine. But you can't use your MD, RD or nursing, whatever, to push this narrative. Now, what I'm meaning that for people listening is you cannot provide evidence of anything in an observational study. You cannot. An observational study is solely to gain data to see if we need to look into further studies to provide evidence of direct cause and effect. That being said, when you look at the general population, the population who's eating the most red meat is who? People who are overweight.
People who smoke.
Men. So if we look at the general population of men who are overweight and who are eating large amounts of red meat. What are they also not doing? They're not eating fruits and vegetables. They're not exercising. They're being a sedentary. Look at all these factors that we know are linked to early death, heart disease, etc. All of them. And now a research study came out suggesting that when fruits and vegetables are consumed in populations with red meat, the risk of colon cancer disappears. And then the other aspect we forget to do it is steak. Most people aren't braising steak. They're not. They're not cooking steak in a crock pot. So they're grilling it. When you grill meat and flame comes in contact with the meat, it forms heterocycloamines and carcinogens and things that you ingest that comes in contact with your intestinal tract over long periods of time, can increase risk for colon cancer. Now, again, the population who is consuming those, because let's be honest, we're not studying colon cancer in bodybuilders here. All right. I don't know of any bodybuilder. I think I've only known like maybe one bodybuilder who had died of colon cancer. But across the board, athletes aren't dying of colon cancer, even though they're eating pounds and pounds of meat. They're also eating a low fiber diet. So we also know that a low fiber intake is also associated with an increase in colon cancer, because the stool and the waste going through the intestinal tract is maintaining more excessive contact with the intestinal tract, and the fibers aren't cleaning intestinal walls and pushing everything out like it's supposed to. You're supposed to have a reasonable transit time pushing all the toxins out of the body. I don't even get involved with conversations with people on that. I just don't, because unfortunately, the large people are sheep. Like, I don't mean that in a political way. No. I mean, just people just jump on the bandwagon to what everyone else is doing or what's the next greatest thing, with never doing the research, never thinking for themselves, and not understanding research. And thank God, like the one thing that my parents pushed me to do, which I didn't want to do, is finish my master's program. And my master's program really gave me the most insight on breaking apart studies and looking at studies.
Sure.
Yeah.
In my internship, I think one of the first days, our preceptor came in and they gave us, we got groups of 4, and they gave us about 50 studies. And they go, okay, between now and the end of the year, you guys have to go through the group and look at these studies and tell me which ones are valid, which one has a significant p-value, which ones can be used to actually mount legitimate evidence into an argument, and then make the other pile into the ones that are biased and make a pile into the ones that are incomplete or can't be used. Let me tell you something. None of them were accurate.
That's what I wanted to hear.
We had half of them. Half of them like, dude, this one's legit. This one's perfect. Because when you read through the study, sometimes you look through the abstract and the discussion, you start picking lines out of the abstract and you're like, oh, look, this is what the study tells me. Okay, but let's take a look further. Who are the subjects? How many subjects were there? Over what time period was it? Was it a statistical difference? Then you go down the list and then it's like, who funded this? Who were the researchers? Does this researcher have a reputation of running the same study over again and getting the same result? These are all things that general population doesn't understand about studies. Studies, the information we know to date is only based on the real information we have from studies now, which might continuously change as they perfect. But it's almost impossible to remove bias from studies. It's almost impossible. There's always some sort of bias. I mean, if you and I are going to do a study in bodybuilding, right, we're obviously going to have some sort of bias when we want it to be a certain way. We might look at each other and be like, we're going to be ethical in conducting the study, but there's still some level of bias there. And that's where people just attach to something that meets their belief or their narrative. My doctor told me I should be a vegan. Why did he say that? Well, he said it's healthier. What proof does he have? Did he watch the Netflix special? Is that what we're going off here?
Don't start on that.
Yeah, it just
don't.
But yeah, tough, that's man. It. Yeah,
it's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the thing. And people like, oh, the other thing too is like when they compared mortality, morbidity rate, comparing vegans to meat eaters. Okay, let's break down general population. This is sums up it all. If females already live a longer life, they already do. Obviously, because men are stupid, we do dumb shit when we're younger, we get killed, but that kind of evens out the population a little bit. But in general, women live longer. The majority of vegans are female. And if you're a vegan, like an old school vegan, not the new school vegans, but old school vegan from the studies they used, you're also probably pretty health conscious, right?
Mhm.
You're probably exercising, you're into nature, you're into hiking, being
Mhm.
healthy body weight.
Yeah.
Generally, people I know, general population who eat steaks, they're going ordering a 30-ounce porterhouse steak, you know,
Oh yeah.
eating baked potato or French fries, and they're not exercising at all, and they're overweight.
No.
It's like, you have to look at fucking results of studying who the people are, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That drives me nuts. It's tough. It's a tough one. You know, like, oh, I remember the egg one. Oh, two whole
Oh
eggs a
yeah.
day.
There was an ostracizing of eggs.
Mhm.
I mean, straight up, I knew I was doing a weird job at this time, but I talked to a guy that he was the CEO of like one of the biggest egg producers at like the top level. And yeah, it was like a complete, I'm trying to put it, I mean, it was dang near on the scale of what we're seeing now with like vaccination, as far as like people thought they were going to die from eating eggs and it was just going to shoot your, I think cholesterol is a big angle they were hitting with
Yep.
people. with
Yeah. Heart disease.
Yep. Heart
And
Yep.
this is the thing that people don't understand. It's like, if you look back at the history of nutrition, there's always been two camps that were trying to look at science, and the camps are pushing the political ground of sales. We need to demonize meat. We need to save the earth. We need to demonize meat, do this. So we're going to attach these to this, and we're going to tell everybody that fats are bad and carbohydrates are good. Well, what happened when the government started recommending that? Obesity blew up, diabetes. And the bottom line is this: people are dying in this country at a substantial rate due to excessive calorie intake, number one. Two, they're eating too many carbohydrates. People are not dying in this country from eating too much meat. They're dying in this country from calorie surplus, being overweight, first, because that's the most important thing. And two, too many sugar and carbohydrates. That's what they're dying from.
Yeah.
And then the same people be like, well, fruit has too much sugar. Fruit, I can't eat fruit. Okay. Oh my Lord.
What's
Oh my
your
Lord.
what's your take on like athletics, like athletes being vegan versus like meat eating? I feel like it's a recipe for disaster. Everyone I've come across who did like they did a whole season. Well, I'm gonna play this season. I'm gonna be vegan leading into it this season, and they ended up not doing great.
I'm a science guy, so I can't sit here and tell you one way or the other because I don't know in that situation.
Yeah,
I will tell you the problem and the obstacle that occurs with people becoming vegan is they don't understand how much effort and knowledge it requires to eat a correct balanced diet with veganism. They don't understand. And what it ends up leading to is an excessive intake of processed vegan products, which ends up super high in vegetable oils, which are horrible for you. Those themselves are going to deliver cardiovascular disease and inflammation in the body. They're eating tons of carbohydrates and sugar. They're not getting a balanced nutrient profile and whole foods and beans and rice. They're just not doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's not as easy. It's much harder. It's way harder to eat vegan on the go than it is to eat meat. It just is. Or to eat, I should say more balanced meal. I have a lot of clients. I stopped taking vegans because it was just too much of a hassle to get the results. I will tell you that. Like getting somebody ripped for a show who's a vegetarian or vegan, the diet just becomes too repetitive. And every time you lower carbohydrates, you're lowering protein too.
Yeah.
And it ends up being a problem luckily now they have a lot of vegan alternatives, like the tofu and the tempeh and all these other, fake burger meats and stuff like that, which can be helpful, but it's processed. It's still got tons of fat in it, tons and tons of sodium. You look at the sodium content in a lot of those vegan replacements, it's like you're at 4,000 milligrams of sodium right there, and they haven't even added any salt to the day.
Yeah, and it looks like
you gotta make it taste good somehow.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it looks like a bad science experiment when you look at the ingredients. Like if you turn over the ingredients and it looks like you can't pronounce even one of the words, probably not a good decision for you.
Yeah, I always tell my vegans, listen. When I used to work with them, even they come to me, listen, I know what you want for your goal, but your goal is obtainable. I can't say that's not. It's going to be a lot harder, but I would really suggest you try and at least incorporate whole pasture-raised eggs, maybe incorporate some Greek yogurt, maybe incorporate some fish, some salmon or something. Like, you don't have to eat tons of it, but just work with it, because you're going to feel better. Oh, this is a great example. I had a women's physique girl, and she was vegan, and I worked with her before, and she came with me, and I said to her, listen, this isn't going to work for me. I go, we're going to have to incorporate something else.
Mm-hmm.
I go, can you work with white fish at least twice a week? I mean, twice a day, white fish. We can do eggs and we can do your vegan protein. And she goes, yes. Dude, she changed that. In 2 weeks, she goes, Chris, I'm so strong. She's like, I feel so good. She's like, my digestion, my bloatings went away. I feel super strong. And as prep goes on, she goes, I think I'm ready to try chicken. I'll do chicken now. And I tell her, and she's like, I don't like the store-bought chickens. I recommended Bell and Evans chicken,
Sure.
you know, the high-end chicken.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I like it. Dude, she got peeled.
Yeah.
She had striated glutes. She was hard as nails, and she crushed her class. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna bring meat down, but I'm definitely not gonna go vegan after that, because she noticed the strength differences she felt. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that fish and that chicken was her trend.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing to say there, because I didn't have a healthy respect for carbohydrates. And I think I was pretty young when I started reading, like, are you familiar with it's Mario Di Pasquale? He wrote the Anabolic Solution. Are you familiar with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was reading that pretty young. I think Mark Dugdale had turned me on to him, and he was utilizing, I guess, kind of that strategy for a long time. But when I started to realize, especially competing in a natural bodybuilding stage, you're looking to use your food to create an anabolic environment, or as much as you can, more so. That was what gave me this respect for what carbohydrates can do to your body when you're actually regulating them and you're controlling when they come into play and how they come into play and the types that come into play. But some of those lessons, I don't know if they're necessarily learned. And obviously it's like you said, like it is, it's different for everyone. Everyone's body's different, but those lessons don't really make sense until you do it. Or that's a really good example, because you are taking someone who had a devoid in their diet, and then you put it in, and then you really see what happens and whether it's beneficial or not beneficial. Because it could, things go the other way too at times when, you put something in. I've had a lot of people that rice doesn't work for them. They get super bloated. It doesn't sit well.
Yeah. Same here.
Yep. A lot. Yeah. And you have to come up with other solutions for that. And, yeah, it's just one of those things. It really makes a lot more sense once you actually do it and you go through one of those situations where you haven't had it. Now you get it, and now you really see what it does for you.
And one thing to expand on that is, when you age, digestion changes.
Yeah.
You ever hear people say, well, I've been eating this my whole life. It wasn't a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it hasn't become a problem now. Because I'll tell you, I've been back in 2009 bodybuilding. I loved oatmeal. I used to eat oatmeal like 4 times a day.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can't even eat oatmeal once now.
Sure.
My stomach's like, forget it.
Yeah.
So things change. Digestion changes. You're an ever evolving, aging body.
Yeah.
Evan told me something one time. I just made me think of this. He's like, dude, you know how when you reach a certain age and there's certain things you just can't do anymore. Like, say you used to be able to jump over a fence.
Mm-hmm.
You used to be able to get out of the bed in an instant sprint and run outside. You used to be able to do this or digest that or do that. And he goes, yeah, I remember that. He goes, well, as soon as that starts happening, he goes, that's the first signs your body's dying. He goes, it's a slow deterioration this way until you're dying. He goes, you reached your peak when you're 25. And after that, it's just a slow, everlasting death until you're older. I started laughing. I'm like, I don't want to look at it that way.
Yeah, that's.
Was he heading into the gym at the time? Were we about ready to train with him? And he starts with that, mind fuck you?
We were at the gym.
Oh, yeah, he was screwing with you.
He's like, dude, but I know exactly what he means. It's like,
yeah.
Remember being able to fall off a roof when you're 15 and you're fine, you just light bruise. And now if I fell off 3 steps, I wouldn't be able to move for a while.
That's why I pay for life insurance now. It's just because that might happen.
Yeah.
Kids,
yeah, me too.
That's a weird. Do you have kids?
No kids.
Okay. That was an odd thing that I didn't think was going to happen, was when we had kids, your mind thinks so different, and it's not, I almost want to say it's a biological thing that kicks in. Like mothers have their mom instincts that kick in. There's some weird stuff that went into my head as a dad that I wasn't consciously thinking about, but it just comes into play. And yeah, those concerns. There's weird
Risk
concerns
assessment, preparedness.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
all those things
Risk-
you don't think about, but I'm maybe
No.
glad that I am thinking about it, because I mean, I don't want to be one of the guys that adds to the list of, that die way too early because they fall off a cliff, because I do some fairly extreme things sometimes. But yeah, it puts things in perspective, and also really made me want to chase longevity to be able to do those things with the lowest risk of injury, so I can keep.
Yeah. I don't have kids, but I have whole life and life insurance for my wife.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I hear people do these risky things, and I'm like, wait, the wife's losing their house within a week. I'm like, well, do they have a contingency plan?
Right.
Did they have 5 kids? Like,
Yeah.
Wait, I'm so confused here. Are they
Right.
living off the seat of their pants the entire time?
Yeah.
Like, that's very poor judgment.
It's scary,
poor
but
judgment.
I think we might be talking about the majority in reality. I don't know, but the more, I mean, I don't have very many friends, but my wife has a lot that somehow she has so much information on, and I really start to question the way people are managing their lives in general. And I don't know that people are to blame themselves, but we live in a weird society that allows people to
Live above their means.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm totally with that. That though, it's also the part of aging is risk assessment.
Yeah.
I remember being
Yeah.
younger. I mean, in the hack squat, my knee feels a little weird with 8 plates. Put 10 plates on.
Yep.
It'll go
Yeah.
away. I'll compensate for it.
I'll
It's
just
fine.
move slower. I'll just move slower.
Yeah.
Let's control it more.
Yeah.
And then I was listening to listening to Fuad podcast the other day, and
Yeah.
what's his face from Germany was like, I was coming down doing a squats, and I felt just a little twinge in my adductor, and then I was done. Walked away to something else.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Fritz.
that's
Yeah.
wisdom. That's wisdom.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I wish you
When
could
you're
acquire
younger,
that,
Yeah.
Vicariously.
We would have never. It's a school of hard knocks, though, and that's
It
one
is.
thing for
It
the
is.
listeners who are young. You will never listen to good advice because you don't feel what that individual is warning you about until it's too late, and that's why it's called the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
That's it. I wish. Oh,
It's funny you brought that up, because I trained at Westside Barbell for a long time, and that's pretty much how it is. Like, oh, what, you felt something in your back? Put another plate on, see if it's still there. It's fine.
Put another plate on there.
That's
See if
pretty
it's
much
still there.
what
Yeah.
happens. I'm
The
just saying.
weight might allow you to get a deeper stretch there. Yeah.
No, they'll just tell you, wow, just instead of monsters, use the mini bands. It's fine. All right.
There's some merit to that. Do you remember? I remember when I used to be a really heavy squatter, and I remember 135 felt freaking weird.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
225
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of puts you into the hip hinge, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Puts you into the hole.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And then 315 was like, oh, it's really comfortable.
Yep.
and
And
then
those
as
are the
you
warm up increments too. You just plate until 4, and then you start thinking about stuff.
Yeah, that was one thing. I was always a cautious person, so I'd always go 135, 225, 315, 365,
Sure.
405, 455.
Yeah.
And Evan would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm like, he was like, what do you, he said, he has something funny to say. He's like, I only go by plates. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go by 25.
Yeah.
I
When
need a little more
you
confidence.
squat with that open hand,
Yeah,
is
the
that
open hand. Yeah.
that's how he'd always squat. Okay, so it wasn't just pictures; it was actually how we'd squat.
No, always those blue shorts, the black socks. Always no knee
Yeah.
wraps, no belt ever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, hey, Chris, we've had you on now for over an hour and a half. I know you have a lot of stuff to do. I have 2 more wrap-up questions. Dustin, do you have anything you want to ask?
I do, but I'd like to have Chris back on in the future, because I could go all day on the.
Yeah, dude. Talking nutrition is great, man.
Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate you having. I know you're a really busy man, so I gotta ask
No,
these
it's much
questions.
out. It's like these last 4 days have been like our makeshift vacation,
Oh,
where we're kind of like doing stuff around the house. I had to do some stuff for my certification to keep my license valid. Just
Mhm.
busy stuff,
yeah.
but no like just client emails are only competitors, but everyone else can wait till Friday.
Okay. Okay.
So
So
we're good.
nice staycation in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Do you and this is a complete random question, but have you gone boar hunting yet? Have you gone helicopter hunting?
I have not. Now,
Okay.
one of my friends I met here is going to take me boar hunting in February, but not from a helicopter.
Oh, okay.
So he just, normal 5.56 rounds are ARs.
Okay.
And then he'll take me. He lives on a huge farm,
Okay.
So they're kind of like run rampant.
They're
but
destroying his farm.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're dangerous. You gotta be careful. So he's got a side by side, and then I guess we'll drive down there. But the helicopter thing is, I've looked into it. It's pretty expensive unless you know somebody.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, expensive. I think it's almost like $2,000 a person. You know, it's like pretty costly. I would love to do that, but I'm not going to spend $2,000 to do that.
That sounds like a Joe Rogan only experience.
No. So I lived down in Dallas Fort Worth because I entered at TCU for like, that's kind of where I started my career. I still got some buddies down there and did a fair amount of that because that's kind of where my network is between Texas, Louisiana, Florida, all those southern areas. So I might shoot you a DM if I can hook you up with something a little bit better. And it'll be with a good crew that I think you'd enjoy doing it with too.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. I've already made a couple of good friends over here. He's got night vision, you know, and there's a shooting range where they turn off all the lights and you can have your own little outdoor area and do like, you know, the infrared laser with your things. And people always say to me, why do you need that? I'm like, why do you need a 500 horsepower car? You don't. It's just fun.
Exactly. Oh, most excellent. No, most excellent. I get asked all the time, why do I keep my pistol loaded? I don't know. Why do you keep gas in your car? I don't know.
Why
I don't
keep your gas full when you have to go to work?
I don't know.
Why you kept your pistol loaded because you worked at Westside? That's why.
That's also true. That's also true. There's a whole other story there. It's like Las Vegas. We won't go into that on camera on recording. We'll go into that after. So, with your competition history, I got to ask, with your eye, and I've talked. We had someone on last week. We asked this, and if you were going to put up a 93 Dorian or an 03 Ronnie, who would win?
03. Was it 03 he looked his best?
I think that was like the purple singlet year.
Dude, Ronnie all day.
Ronnie all day. Now, like, why? Out of curiosity, why? Is he had the waist?
I think it's more or less structure.
Okay.
I mean, dude, Dorian's awesome. Mentality's just second to none.
Yeah.
But Ronnie, I think it was 03, that crazy picture where he was like 285 pounds, just peeled to the bone. It was his best look of all time. That was just that would never be topped. Yeah. I just think I still look at pictures from then and be like, that's a human being.
Yeah, it's not an alien. Yeah,
what? That's crazy.
Do you see that when you're scrolling through Instagram, that back shot from 03 where it's just there's no body fat, there's no water accumulation anywhere. His lower back is just dry. You see every fiber. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's just, man, that was my era too. That was my era. Like when I first started getting into bodybuilding, even in high school, it was always like Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even my high school football coach had Ronnie Coleman posters in the weight room, you know.
That's incredible.
School, you know, that was great. Dude, Ronnie was the best, dude. His personality, you know, is just like, you know what's really funny? The first exercise video I ever saw was Ronnie's. So at, I don't know, 18 years old, 19 years old, I had this interpretation that all bodybuilders like that were like clowns, like this guy.
Looked like that and did that.
Yeah. And then I got Jay Cutler's video. I'm like, this is the most boring video I've ever watched in my life. I'm like, when we put in Dexter Jackson's, I'm like, this is even worse.
That's pretty bad. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, Ronnie Coleman's yelling, screaming, lifting obnoxious weight.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely huge. Yeah. Like him going to the chiropractor, arresting people, like eating at the Black Eyed Pea like 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Like that, it doesn't get any funnier than that.
No, absolutely not. Like half my family's from Texas. And when I went there and after I'd seen that would have been my high school years too. I told I have to go to the Black Eyed Pea.
Yeah.
I have to eat there once, see what the fuss is about. I'm like, this is great. And when I went there, I'm like, yeah, if I could call up Katie every day and be like, have my food ready, I'm half an hour there. Okay. I mean, would you not? I mean, it's great. Like for me, I'm simpler. So I'd have to have an Outback meal, just like call my Outback and go, but like,
oh man, just, there's so many things about his personality, because the thing is this, he's not trying to be funny.
No, that's just him.
He's just completely being Ronnie.
Yeah.
You know, and I like his documentary, and when I hear other Branch Warren was being interviewed, and he was talking about what it was like to train with Ronnie and how he was, and hearing Branch's interpretation of Ronnie, how he was like the ultimate optimist, like he was always positive, and how he was just dangerously competitive, like they're deadlifting back and forth and Branch is like, dude, he just kept putting on a plate and being like, lift it, put it on the plate, lift it, put it on the plate, lift it. And these were deadlifting for like, Branch is like, whoa, we're gonna get hurt here. Do it, lift it. Like, just like competitive and just an ultimate optimist, you know?
Did you see the King documentary?
No, what you mean, Ronnie Coleman's one?
Yeah.
The whole documentary about his current status is all that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know. When you watch that, did you walk away from that like, oh? Because
No,
I got pseudo depressed. I watched that. Like I watched it too late at night, and I was like, oh, I couldn't sleep that night.
Man, let me tell you, though, like, I'm not surprised. I mean, you look at top tier 1 operators in the military and like what they've accomplished and what they've done in their life, and then where they sometimes end up. It's sad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you look at a lot of top athletes who are the pinnacle of the best, and then you look at their 50s and 60s. O.J. Simpson. You know what I mean? Like at one point, the dude's legit.
He was the man.
Then he ends up just a huge trajectory downward. But it wasn't a shock to me because you put your body through that much rigor, eventually something gives, and a lot of people wouldn't trade that. I mean, he's the greatest of all time, you know? I mean, what an experience in life he's lived. And he's, you know, it is sad. It is for sure, but I wasn't shocked.
Yeah.
You know, I love the story with the whole like trading burgers and pizza.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You sick of eating pizza? You sick of eating burgers? You want to trade?
That's fine. Let's bring them over there. We switch them every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great.
So funny.
I mean,
so funny.
So last question. It's not a nutrition question, but Dustin knows this about me. I'm a really big gym equipment connoisseur. Nebula, Perillo, Hammer, Gen 1 Nautilus. Like, I love it. I have a gym here in Columbus. It's 3,800 square feet, just filled with this stuff. So my question for you is, all the gyms you've been to, if you could pick one compound leg machine, one compound chest, one compound back, what are they? What guess has to be brand specific?
We're talking if Nebula still owned Nebula, right?
Because Tommy, Nebula, this is great. This is a great question. Oh yeah, if Tommy Ehrlichman still owned Nebula and was still producing, yeah, I got the name. Oh, I know. If he was still in charge of it, yes.
Yeah, who bought Nebula now?
I want to say Rogue acquired Nebula.
Okay. The leg equipment, man,
compound
it's changing different eras, but if it's a machine, it has to be that old Icarian hack squat at Powerhouse New Haven. It's a yellow one.
Okay.
Got to be back from the 80s. If I had to pick a machine for back, I still think that horizontal Nebula barbell row. You know what I'm talking about?
This the plate loaded or the selectorized?
Plate loaded. The plate loaded Nebula row. You're lying horizontal. You're lying parallel to the floor. And you can pull the bar up.
Oh yeah, I've never seen those in real life, but yeah.
Yeah, New Haven has one and Fox Fitness has one.
Oh.
And dude, it's dead weight and it's chest supported, you know? So like you take the core out of it, you can row it in different variations for your lats, for upper back. And then what's the other one you said?
Chest.
I've always been a dumbbell guy.
Okay, well, can't do that. Had to be a machine.
After you've hit the dumbbell presses.
Okay, yeah.
This is how I answer the question.
Yeah, actually, yes. So at Fox Fitness, they have Arsenal's plate loaded incline.
Oh, you like that?
Ooh, okay.
Okay. Because it's adjustable in many different avenues. You know, I can adjust the incline bench slightly up and down. I can adjust the press. So it has the best feel to me, that particular machine. I've never, ever liked any type of plate loaded flat press of anything.
Okay.
I never have.
So you tried the Prime ones? Strive Prime?
The Prime plate loaded ones?
Yeah.
Or the Prime weight stack?
Either.
I have tried the Prime weight stack flat press.
Okay.
It wasn't too bad because you can adjust where the tension is, you know?
Right.
But it wasn't something that stood out.
Okay.
The one at Fox Fitness here stood out. I just think for some reason for me for chest, free weight, dead weight, plate loaded, or regular free weights just has a different feel to me than a plate loaded.
Yeah.
It just does. Like hamstring curls, obviously I love Prime, right?
Oh, that's a great curl machine.
Yeah. It's amazing. There was a plate loaded one in Universal Fitness in the gym I used to train at in Connecticut. and he has a bunch of prime stuff, and it had a lot of prime plate loaded leg extension, prime plate loaded leg curl that was magnificent, really good.
Were you surprised by that plate loaded leg extension? How smooth and how good that was?
Yeah, because as I've gotten older, leg extensions feel weird to me. You know, when I was younger and like your knees are just mint, you can just leg extension anything and feel great. Like the old Cybex weight stack that, like, you know, the leg thing, when you do it, it's like this, you know,
the VR2, it's like all crooked. Yeah.
Definitely more comfortable. Oh wait, you're right. The plate I did use a plate loaded one in Germany. I don't know if I remember the brand of it. It was probably one of my favorite leg extensions ever. I don't remember the name of it.
In Germany, really? It
was Germany. Actually, I don't have my phone on me. I was like, I'll have to get back to you on that. Evan, it's that blue brand. It's a blue.
It's the one with the thing you can adjust. It's like a box. But it's a gearbox.
Yeah, it's a blue machine.
Yeah.
It's a blue line. I guess they don't really make them anymore in Germany, but it was a line they used to make. They make an awesome flat press.
Really?
Plate loaded flat press. Yeah.
I've heard their pec fly is incredible.
Yeah, that's the pec. Evan and I did a video together for Animal when I was in Germany for FIBO, and we used that. And Evan said the same thing. It's like the weight's incredible. The weight, the feel, how it feels. Like, it's amazing how all the technology in the brains. Like, we see these new machines come out, and you go to the gym and you're like, what the hell is this? This is a piece of crap. You know, it's like how much money that machine is, how much engineering they put. The people who design this, do they even lift? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's always the first question, which is a concern. I mean, it's just like men design women's bras. The same thing's happening in the fitness industry. The wrong people are putting things together sometimes. I'm amazed that there isn't like those companies, like maybe they are. I could be completely ignorant to this, but especially ones that like pop out that are new. They don't have a paid team of bodybuilders, people that really can analyze this stuff, paying them to use the stuff in like trials and then like tweaking it to make it amazing. I mean, there's
like have a criteria.
Yeah, but you want to get some good feedback and get things dialed in and figure some stuff out. Like, I
mean, think about this. Think about this for a second. How easy would it be? Okay, I'm Cybex. I'm developing a new pec deck.
Yeah,
and my dorky engineers designed this machine, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna call up some pro bodybuilders.
That's it,
guys. Why don't you come over and get a crazy chest day? All the machines you can use for free.
Yeah.
Just try them out and let me know what you feel. Doesn't cost anything.
Nope.
You know, as us as bodybuilders and athletes, like we're all about trying new equipment.
Yeah.
And then they're like, then we're gonna feel like really special. They're like, oh, they want me.
Me?
That's a good point. You're making very valid points right now. Yeah.
Isn't that
they
what
just need to do it?
Isn't that what Atlantis? I mean, Atlantis is owned by a former Mr. Canada, is it not? Am I off base?
I think you're right, actually. I could be,
but apparently, all their stuff feels really good to the muscle.
Yeah,
because apparently that guy
would make sense, and
he doesn't do anything out that's not legit.
But even the old school hammer strength machines, I don't know if you guys ever been to Powerhouse New Haven, Mount Airy's brother.
Not yet.
Their hammer strength line is the best hammer strength line I've ever tried.
Is that early 90s?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like when you're pressing the plate loaded flat press, like it's moving here. It ain't doing this.
Right.
It's not swooping. It's straight out.
Right. It moves straight out. You know. And the incline press the same way. It's like it moves in a good arc. It's not like, oh, we're starting at pecs, we're ending at shoulders. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny because like the hammer strength. I love hammer strength, but the hammer strength ISO bench does not love me. Every time I've used it, first time I went to physical therapy was for my right shoulder. It's because it does something to the shoulder. And actually, I realized that again. I put it back in after like 6-7 years. After like 3 or 4 weeks of running it, it started giving me a shoulder issue, and because it has that swooping up effect.
Yep, 100%.
Oh, I never knew that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, like we've had you on for a long. You got to get going. Got to do what you got to do. You got a long staycation. You got to live on. We got to have you on. We got to have you on again. Now that we know that you're into the mental aspect of the athlete, we got to have.
It's everything.
Yeah, we got to have you on again down the road if that's something you're into.
Is there anything?
Is there anything you want to plug? We'll put the links below.
Yeah. So I designed a mineral-based water enhancer. People who drink Mio and they add it to their water to help, flavor their water. I developed one, in my opinion, and a lot of the other people that I had for testing taste much better than Mio. and it's mineral based, but we're not talking mineral based where you're going to like OD on your minerals, right? It's the whole idea is to incentivize adequate hydration through the whole day. Most people have difficulty time getting water in. So I'm like, man, we need a water enhancer that has a good flavor, because a lot of people don't, there's 50% of people that don't like Mio, 50% of people that do like Mio. And I want to add a little bit more to it. So we add essential minerals to it, much lower on the sodium side. So we're more pressing potassium and magnesium, but you're still going to be able to drink 4, 5, 6 liters a day and not worry about getting too much magnesium and potassium. I mean, you see a lot of drinks out there today that are just pushing gobs and gobs of sodium. It's like, yeah, they have their application and what they need to do, but it's not something you put in your drink and you drink all day long. Yeah. And you see a lot of people drinking aminos in their water all day long, which is a very expensive way to flavor your water. Yep. So I designed something, it's called Drink Pew. You can find it on Instagram. It's in the works. We finalized the flavors, and now we're just getting the whole process and the bottles and everything down. Should be out in March, but that's been something I've been working on for a while. It's been months, but it's tough to nail the right flavor down. Let me tell you, that was a fiasco.
Okay, is that something you're going to release at the Arnold? Are you coming up for the Arnold, or are you?
Arnold this year is when?
The normal time.
Still first week of March?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's probably not going to be ready the first week in March.
Okay.
But I will be going to those trade shows and things like that as things go, especially the one here in Texas. And once it goes, I'm going to be traveling a lot more with it and get it out there. Okay. But it's one thing I always see with people. I'm like, my clients, even bodybuilders in the off season, I just can't get enough water in. I don't want to drink it. And this flavor, it nabs it down, man. And we have a lemonade and a sweet tea. And the reason we picked those two flavors to start, because you can obviously mix lemonade and sweet tea together, half and half, and have a choice of 3. So you guys can keep a lookout on that.
That was a thoughtful move right there.
Yeah.
We got 3 flavors, but only 2.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me, honestly, is through my website, and just let everybody know, like, I'm not accepting new clients on. I've had a wait list for quite some time, and I can't keep expanding this wait list and people waiting forever. So I just stopped adding to it. Okay. But if you want to contact me, it would be through my website, tuttlenutrition.com, and go from there. It's been a little overwhelming with everybody emailing me, because I do help not just competitors. Actually, the majority of my clients aren't competitors. They are more nutrition-related disease, diabetes management, managing food allergies and digestive disorders, and of course, weight loss, general population, and everybody else in between.
Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Well, hey, man, we'll let you go, and I'll shoot you a text in a little bit, and hopefully get you back on down the road.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Talk to you soon, man.
All right. No problem.
Right. Bye. That's a smart dude. He brought in more of the mind than I thought was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot of deep nutrition dives, but that was like 60% mind, and I
had a feeling.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I had a feeling his first little segment he went on, I was like, I could tell where his mind was at, because I see those same kind of things. And I didn't share the story, but I've had clients where they wanted to continue working with me, but they could not. We spent 8 weeks maybe just trying to figure out how to mentally do the diet, and we'd already adjusted it to where this is the simplest thing they can follow. We're not even doing a whole lot different than what they had been doing to get in the mess that they were in. I was like, I can't do anything on paper with the food that's going to make this better. So we got to do everything externally outside of the food to make the food work. Yeah. And he pretty quickly learned to that. And that's one of those things that, especially working with Gen Pop, I could tell that he has been down the road as far as all the things that they don't teach you in school, and all the things that you think are going to be applicable in that realm. But there's so much more, just like a lot of things, there's so much more going on. And I haven't come across anyone that puts out free content that should be being compensated for it, because he is on the ball with everything.
Yeah. When he talked about when he was at nutrition school, and like they're telling him, like, these are the type of diet basis for the bodybuilder, the athlete, the this, the that.
Well, we get those questions in like CSCS and stuff like that, and the
Oh,
basic
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Which is, of course, is 100% correct. And
I wrote an email to them.
yeah, I remember going through and having to do the. Do you remember having to do the ACSM?
Yes.
So I remember going through that and be like, okay, you always start everyone off on like a 3x10 or 3x15. You do this and that. And I remember asking, because I was the only one that either cared or was ballsy enough to ask the professor, like, well, out of curiosity, instead of starting with like a 3x10, what if we just did a 10x3, and that way it gives me more opportunity to adjust form and their technique along the way. You theoretically could push the percentage a little higher, not much higher, because obviously they're just starting, but you give them more opportunities to start, stop, reset, adjust, start, stop, reset, adjust, and like actually learn the lift. And he looked at me, he's like, yeah, that's you are right, but for the test, no.
Right.
I'm like,
right.
And that was the first inclination. I'm like, oh, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Like there's a problem.
I remember having a similar experience when I allowed a professor to come in and basically run. He was trying to do his own study. I think he was doing his doctorate. He was teaching. I can't remember all the exact scenarios, but the short of the long was like what Chris was talking about, where you've read the book, you're trying to apply what you've learned in the book, and then and you're sticking to it because this is the gospel. And then you start to realize the crux of the environment where you try to implement things. And like, this is why studies don't work too, in regard, or why it's so easy to pick them apart if you know something about what's going on. And training environment does not dictate utilizing what the book says. I mean, case in point with this scenario was the book said you needed to take a 5-minute rest between these sets. And if you didn't, like, this was not beneficial. Like you can't do it. It required 5 minutes, or it was actually more absurd. He was following the book and it said you had to have 8-minute rest between these sets. And I was like, you can't, because he was questioning me why I didn't do that in our training. It's like, because we have stuff to get done and we have 30 minutes to work out. We're not doing that. Like, that is not applicable. He's like, it's not going to work then. I go, it will.